So this is what we prepared, a day in the life of a SOC analyst. And these are the topics we thought you'll be interested in. So we're going to give you a brief introduction to a SOC, what a SOC is, and what happens inside a SOC. Next is the SOC structure, which is the hierarchy for SOC analysts. And then we're going to take you through some of the skills you need as a SOC analyst, and also according to the tier you are as a SOC analyst. And then day-to-day activities of SOC operations. And then lastly, we're going to tell you some of the tools we use in a SOC for security monitoring and analysis. So before
the slides are not moving to the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see.
Okay, yeah, it's fine now.
Yeah, so these are the topics I had highlighted. Introduction to a SOC, what a SOC is, the structure and the hierarchy for SOC analysts, some of the skills you need, day-to-day activities in a SOC, and some of the SOC tools you need for security monitoring and analysis. So before we go to who is a SOC analyst, I just wanted to give a brief introduction of what is a SOC. So a SOC is a Security Operations Center in full, and this is where analysts usually do continuous monitoring of IT infrastructure. So this is you checking servers, applications, networks, so that you're able to detect cybersecurity events in real time as they come into the system, and you can address them as quickly as possible. It's also not really limited to security. We also usually check network performance. So that's also included in some of the SOC operations. So a SOC analyst's main duty is to monitor, analyze, and respond to security issues. This is whereby the analyst usually monitors networks for any signs of attacks and responds to them effectively in real time. So in a SOC, there are usually tiers for SOC analysts, and the lowest tier one is SOC analyst one, and this is where triage happens. So in the SOC analyst one position, they're usually responsible for monitoring the security alerts that come. So let's say you're using a SIM, usually have multiple alerts that come. And so for SOC analyst one is the one who's supposed to go through the multiple alerts, and they need to analyze and prioritize the alerts. So you can prioritize the alerts according to low, medium, high, and critical, so that you're able to understand or prioritize the critical alerts. So once the SOC analyst one has classified an alert and they've actually seen this is a legitimate attack that is happening, they usually escalate it to the SOC analyst two. So the next on the hierarchy is SOC analyst two. That's the tier two. So here, this is where the incident handling happens, and the SOC analyst two is the incident responder, who responds to the incidents raised by the SOC analyst one. And usually here, the person performs a deeper analysis on the event and usually tries to identify the source of an attack and try to remediate the situation. So for example, let's take an event like a host has been compromised. Let's say someone downloaded a malicious attachment. So the duty of the SOC analyst too can be to identify the particular host in which segment of the network. They can check running processes on the hosts and kill the processes that are connecting the host to the command center for the attacker. They also can identify how the device got infected. They also confirm if there's lateral movement and if other devices have been affected. And once they've done the incident responding, they finish by cleaning the devices and returning the device back into production. So the third on the tier is the SOC analyst 3, and this is the threat hunter. In threat hunting, you usually look for threats that have past network defenses that SOC Analyst 1 and 2 might have missed during their analysis. So here they just check for vulnerabilities inside the systems that have not been identified and how they can get exploited. And apart from SOC Analyst 3, there's usually another tier, but it's usually another tier for SOC Analyst 4, but this is more of a management position whereby there's a lead in the SOC team. And they don't usually do the day-to-day monitoring or incident handling. They just manage operations from SOC Analyst 1 to 3. So this is a management position. Also, in these three hierarchies, some of the SOCs you can find in the organization, they haven't labeled them, like some of the duties are not defined. Not SOC Analyst 1 can also do incident handling, can also do job for SOC Analyst 2. SOC Analyst 2 can also do a job for SOC Analyst 3. So it depends on different organizations and how they've decided to put in their job description of which tier of SOC someone and the roles and the responsibilities in each tier. So some of the skills you need as a SOC analyst, and I'd like to arrange them according to the three tiers we've talked about. So like as a SOC analyst 1, the first 4 which have been highlighted: network administration, you must know networking protocols, how networks work, cybersecurity principles and tools used in cybersecurity, threat intelligence and SOC operations are critical to knowing. That's like the baseline for entering a SOC. So the first 4 which have been listed are a must. And then you can also know Linux administration, because some of the systems you're going to come across, they are built on Unix, the Unix-based system. So it's good to know. So for a SOC analyst 2, whereby incident handling is involved, they usually have forensic skills for analysis and incident handling skills. And lastly, for the SOC analyst 3, they usually have more complex skills such as penetration testing, malware analysis, reverse engineering, vulnerability assessments, and Python is usually more of a nice to know, nice to have skills as a SOC. So also over here, you'll find that these skills are not limited to any hierarchy. It's good to know most of them in your line of work. And some of the resources usually use as a SOC or to build your knowledge as a SOC. You can check out Blue Team Labs on the internet. This is a very nice resource where you can practice security investigations and digital forensics and incident handling. It's usually like a try hack me, but for blue team security, just investigations. Also, there's try hack me. In try hack me, I believe they have a room for SOC level 1 room, which some of you can check. And this is a great introduction to SOC fundamentals. They'll take you through tools they use and real life scenarios in a SOC. And lastly, we have Hack the Box, which is more of red team, but it's also a good, it usually ups your skills in knowing how attackers can exploit the vulnerabilities in your system. So I'm going to invite Doreen to take us through the next portion of the introduction, which is an in-depth of some of the activities.
Question before Doreen takes over. I just wanted to know, do you want questions like to interrupt or do you want questions at the end of the presentation? Which one would work best for you?
We can have questions at the end of the presentation.
Okay, thank you. All right.
So thank you, Joy, for that. So in terms of activities, like on a typical day-to-day would be, surveilling the networks that you're monitoring, identify and assessing any security threats that are coming in real time through the various tools that we use, and then responding to the incidences and investigating if that needs to be investigated, and also like collaborating with other team members who are either in different tiers or monitoring different things within the SOC, and basically staying up to date on latest security threats, and also participating in some security audits when they arise. So with the activities, I'll just go through like a typical like day at the SOC. So basically you'd be working in like shifts, so to speak. So you'll be taking over from the previous set of analysts who were there before. So you have like a handover period where they take you through what happened during their shift, anything they saw that was suspicious, anything that you should be observing, or anything that needs to be looked into. And then yeah, after that, now I guess you begin your monitoring your day. And then it's also important to stay up to date, that you can know maybe if there are any new techniques or tactics that are being used in the industry, you can know to monitor for that. And then yeah, so it's just basically a lot of iteration between monitoring and also knowing what exactly is happening, and also learning about new tools. So there's a lot of also learning that's involved based off of exterior knowledge, as well as also from the team members you're working with, because you find that being in a SOC, it gives you, it helps when you have different backgrounds. For example, if you come from a network security background, then you have an in-depth knowledge of how networks operate, how to set them up, and how to monitor them. Therefore, you know exactly what to look for. And then let's say if you come from maybe like a development background, you know how to monitor, be it web applications or mobile applications and the devices as well. So you know exactly what to look for. So with all these skills coming into a SOC, there's a lot of collaboration and sharing that happens. Joy, next slide. So some of the activities that go on, like you have log collection from the various tools that you're using. For example, in a day-to-day, we do use a SIEM tool. So there's a lot of logs that are gotten from the different devices that are connected to the SIEM. And then the SIEM has a way of displaying them very well. So you fine tune it, and then you get exactly what you need. And then you can run the reports. And then there's a bit of research and development. Basically, you're constantly updating yourself and learning new skills. And then you basically have threat intelligence, where you're looking at maybe what information came after the previous shift, what has been going on in the previous hours, and what has been going on during your shift. And then you're like, okay, let me put these two together and see, is there a correlation? And you're also analyzing like previous reports or previous week, like is there anything that is happening periodically? Basically, just to keep up to date, to know what exactly is happening. And then also you look at like threat intelligence platforms and what is new and what are the new tactics, and then you apply that to now what you have. And then you have like your knowledge base, ticketing, where if there's something suspicious and you need to give it to someone else to analyze, then you put it in a ticket, and then someone else in the next, if it's a tiered SOC, maybe you're just in L1, so your triage, your work is to look at, is this suspicious, then hand it over to L2 and L3 for more investigation. So you have your SIEM tool, and then aggregation and correlation. Basically, that happens within the SIEM. Sometimes you get to do it yourself when you're like analyzing reports, be it for the week or the month. So you can get to see, are there any patterns that have been noticed? Then you get to investigate them. Next slide. So some of the tools that you typically find in a SOC are like SIEM tools. They help you monitor. So for example, the SIEM tool mostly work with, it's connected to a data center, it's connected to firewalls, it's connected to the servers. So you get to have coverage over all that and notice if there's anything suspicious. And then you can have like your XDR, they offer like extended detection and response, and network monitoring. We have certain tools, for example, like PRTG by Pacelight allows you to monitor like network availability and uptime and downtime for different devices that are connected. And then like SIM tools, you have things like FortiSIM, which is proprietary, and then you have some open source tools like Wazoo, which is very good for practicing if you want to know how to use and set up SIM. And then obviously you have firewalls. Sometimes you monitor information from the firewall, and then you have data center monitoring and database monitoring. So basically you have tools that are able to aggregate all this into one. So you have like one portal that you're observing throughout the day. Yeah, next slide. So yeah, and I guess it would be good to iterate the importance of a SOC, which is every battle is won before it is fought. So that is essentially your work in a SOC, is to detect before it gets to the point where you need to respond to it. So yeah, that is all for us today. And I guess now we can take in any questions, like any additions. Maybe someone wants to add something to our presentation. We're open to it.
I already have questions. Benjamin, your hand was up first. You can go.
Thank you so much, Doreen and Joy. I've loved what I've learned through the presentation, especially in line to the kind of tools you guys interact with as SOC analysts. Now, my question for today will be, for guys like us who are looking to step into the field, how would you advise us to say, I want to have an opportunity to get to work in an environment where I can learn or work as a SOC analyst? What starting points would you advise us to go for? Because we've also realized that it's hard to find an entry level position in most cybersecurity related fields. So what would you advise people like us to look for when looking for jobs within the market? Thank you.
Okay, I guess I can take the first one. So basically, from what you've had, like our experiences and our journey through it, it didn't specifically start from like right into cybersecurity. Some people are lucky like that the opportunity presents itself, but usually there are very many avenues to get into, and you just don't want to wait until you have like the specific opportunity. You can get into others. It definitely helps to build your knowledge base also, whether you're coming from dev, whether you're coming from networks, whether you're even coming from the audit side, because I do have a background in audit. So they all guide your knowledge base when you're coming to a SOC. So I just say take whatever is in front of you, and then based on where you're working and the position you're in, you can be able to pivot into that, whether if you're given the opportunity within the organization you work for, or if it's leading you to something else. And I guess before even like applying or getting that, it's good to also have, even if you don't have like a certification in it, there are so many online resources that you have. So whether it's the free ones, you just enroll, practice, taking as much information as you can, so that you're like, even when you're going for an interview, applying for those positions, you're like, I do not have practical. For example, before I started my job in a SOC, I did mention in the interview, I do not have practical knowledge about what goes on in a SOC, but I do have a lot of theoretical knowledge. Like I have learned it, I have implemented my own SIM, I have my own lab environment that I know exactly what happens. So even if I'm joining that organization, I just need to know the tools they're working with, but the knowledge before that I already have. Yeah, that's what I'd advise.
Thank you.
Okay, we had Keep next and then Crispus. Keep, are you speaking? I can see your mic is on. Okay, I think Crispus, you can go next as we wait for Kip to fix his mic.
Okay, thanks Jennifer, and also thanks Doreen and Joy for the introduction on SOC Analyst. So I just wanted you to comment briefly on threat intelligence. When you talk about the types of threat intelligence, we have the technical, and strategic. So if you could please break it out, like which tier is involved on the types of threat intelligence. Maybe like if you can comment on if it is tier 1 that is collecting strategic intelligence.
Oh, okay. So when it comes to threat intelligence, basically, like for example, in our SOC, we usually do the same duties: tactical, operational. It's not divided as SOC 1, you're doing this, SOC 2, you're doing this one. So it just depends on the SOC environment you'll find. Some usually do all, some usually segregate it according to the duties.
Oh, thanks. Well understood.
And just to add on that, if you want like more info on threat intel, there is on the, if you check out the FOSEC blog, there is like an article on threat intel, and it will lead you to one of the presentations we gave on threat intelligence.
All right, thank you. If you need the link to the blog, it's on the chat. So you can just check that out. Right. Mordecai, you can go first.
Yeah, first of all, good evening. I hope everyone is okay. Thank you so much, Doreen and Joy, Professor. Now, my question revolves around knowledge patterns that you guys use to educate yourself, especially on prevalent or upcoming threats. Because one of the things you get to learn about cybersecurity or yeah, just in general is the fact that it's ever evolving. And one of the most annoying things, though I tend to be on the side of red teamers, is the fact that, you know, like attackers tend to be very, very creative. And catching up is usually, it's not easy. So what are some of the ways, or like what are some of the sources that you typically use, especially as a SOC analyst, that you can learn from, like the typical sources that you'd use, learn from, and eventually implement based on the operations that you partake in on a daily basis? Thank you.
I guess I'll take this one. So basically, in terms of knowledge base, it helps to, in some tools that we use, they are like integrated threat intel platforms. So you get like an update. Plus also what helps me is you can sign up for like newsletters like the Sun's one. There is a report, and there are so many reports that come out every year on, you know, the landscape. In Kenya, there's even one by KESAT. It's the Kenyan Incident Response Center, I guess, team that there is there. And also sites like Hacker News, podcasts like the very famous cybersecurity one by Jack Resider. So there's a lot of info out there on what's new. Plus then also, if you look at the MITRE attack framework, there's a site online, so you can keep yourself up to date on the various techniques, tactics, and procedures that are there. And you find some stay the same, some are just modified a bit, and they do a good job of updating what is there. So that then informs you on, what you're supposed to monitor. Basically, just being able to get that mindset. Plus, also, if you have a background in like pen testing, it can also help you create that, the hacker mindset. If you know how you're going to break in, then definitely you're going to know how to protect it.
And then just to add to that, when she's saying about the resources and they say this is how the exploit is done, you can usually try it yourself to see if it actually works. So that can be really helpful.
Right. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
All right. Edwin,
Hello.
I'll keep you ready. You can go.
Okay, so my name is Dennis. I can see the girl child is winning in the house anyway. Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Saying we use let's say for the for the those integrate, like you integrate a lot of tools into a SOC, like it's an integration of tools, right? Like you talked of Wazoo, and there are so many other tools. Now, what if like you talk of the tools that you are using, the ones you said it was a VM or something. Why don't you give us a tip of what tools did you have at that time? I know you can't tell us about the tools that you're using now, but then what were the tools that you had before you, at that time you went for the interview? And then another thing is the malware analysis tools and and for the endpoint security, which tools do you use? Let's say for the image analysis, you take an image and then, okay, there is this like FTK and something, you take an image and then you go analyze. So what tools are you using? Yeah, thank you.
Could you kindly repeat for, I've only gotten for the malware analysis and tools in the SIEM. Is there any other you needed clarification on?
No, I needed the tools that you use, a sample or something, then yeah, it could be a plus on 1, 2, 3.
So for the SIEM, you can start with Wazoo, and then you can integrate it with something called Kibana. Kibana is usually used to visualize the logs. And for collecting logs, there's usually Sysmon. For Windows, you can use that. For malware analysis, there's usually a website called AnyRun. You can go and search for it, and it's usually used to analyze the malware. You can check the behavior. Yes, Doreen, do you have any additions to some of the tools?
Yeah, I guess also some forensics tools. You have autopsy, you have there. If you just check out on GitHub, there's a guy, I can't remember his name, who has like a repository of basic from basic forensic tools to like more of the high-end forensic tools, but are more open source. So there's like a guide, and then you can now go and visit the different pages on how to use them. But I think Joy has covered most of them actually. And yeah, so in terms of open source, there are quite a few that you can use to practice.
And also for the SIEM, you can check out Security Onion, but it usually consumes a lot of resources. So your server or machine needs to be really good. Also, you can check Alien Vault. There's a free version for a SIM, and it's usually simple. It's easy to install, so you can check those three out as for a start.
Yeah, and also
Okay, then another question, please. Now, you talked of killing processes from an endpoint. Now, in case of, let's say, in case of a malicious activity that is going on in from the endpoint, you kill the process in that machine. Now, are you killing these processes remotely, or you go physically to the end machine, to the endpoint? Yeah.
If you have the machine there, you physically, if you have remote connection to the machine, you can still do it. So it just depends on your situation.
Now, is the remote connection part of the SOC tools?
Yeah, yes. We usually use a VPN to securely connect us to the networks.
Okay.
any other question?
Oh, sorry, I was talking on mute. Edwin Otieno is next. You can go.
Oh, thanks, Jennifer. Thank you so much, also Joy and Doreen. My question was similar to what the previous guy had asked. My question was simply, what SIM tools are you currently using at the moment, and also whether you have any experience with other SIM tools out there, and whether there is also a preference, because very recently in my workplace, I've been trying to work with one called CrowdSec. Hasn't been very easy to set it up, but I'm still trying to work my way around it. And so I'd like to know, based on your experience out there, what I guess you've mentioned what you guys are working with, and whether there's also a preference. Thanks.
So in terms of preference, well, I don't really have any that I prefer, because basically my experience is whatever it is that we're working with is what I'm going to learn it through and through and learn how to work it. But in terms of, I can't really answer towards preferences, but definitely there are some that are simpler to set up than others. But
yeah, that's kind of the question, whether there's any that has been, slightly better to work with, something like that. It doesn't have to be something you like or hate.
Okay, because I guess at the moment I have a lot of experience with 40SIM. So I'd be biased towards that because that is what I know. There are some also open source ones, the ones that Joy has mentioned that we have used in the past, like just like trial and testing to see, which gives us the best coverage. But usually what happens is sometimes the people we work with, they have what they're already using. So we just piggyback off of what exactly they're using, learn the environment, and then find a way to integrate it to our system. So maybe Joy can add on that.
Okay.
Oh, and sorry, Edwin, to know if I usually think, if you usually check, let's say you go to a job description for a SOC analyst, you can tell which company uses which preferred SIM based on the job description. So you can see some are looking for someone who knows Splunk, others SolarWinds, Alien Vault. So for every organization is just different.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
the other question I think I had was on average, on average, how many threats do you get to deal with maybe in a day? Maybe just encounter, it doesn't have to be like the full circle, like how many threats maybe you get to encounter and maybe you get to also deal with on average in a day.
On average, in a day, they're usually, if you go with false positives, they're usually the most. You can get a lot of false positives, so you have to comb through them and actually identify which one of them are actually true positives. So for true positives per day, maybe they're not usually a lot, maybe one, and it doesn't happen on a daily basis. So each day is different based on my experience.
On a good
Okay.
day, none. on a bad day, sometimes you can get like 3 or 4, and some carried on maybe from the previous guys who were in the SOC. But yeah.
Okay, so thanks. That's all for me.
Maybe what I
Okay.
can add on what this guy is asking on the number of attacks that you can get per day or something. I think it would depend on the organization or something, like how popular is the organization, what do you deal with, and then now interest from the attackers. If you deal with something the attacker could be so very interested in, then that's where you get frequent attacks.
I agree totally with that, because I'm sure banks get hacked on a daily basis and other organizations once in a while. So that's true. Thank you for that.
Plus also, I guess another determining factor is how well the organization has covered their bases. Because sometimes you find a lot of the false positives we get, usually it's just like, for example, if an employee is like, breaching protocol, if you're torrenting within a network, we will get a flag that there is so much data coming in and out of the organization. So we'll probably flag that, but you look into it, you find just some guy who was torrenting. So that's a false flag. So it just depends on how well the organization covers their bases.
Right. Ian?
Hi guys, thank you Doreen and Joy for the informative session. My question just goes around duration. Like I would just like to get to know, get a overall picture of how long it took both of you, let's say, to leave to move from L1 to L2 and L3. Yes.
I guess usually I guess from L1 to L2 could take you a couple of months or a year, but generally it would depend on what is your background coming into it. Because I mean, if you already have some prior knowledge, for example, if you're coming in and you already know how to reverse engineer and stuff like that, so that would like quickly take you to like L3 because you have that background knowledge. So I guess it depends on how much you can learn, as well as the environment. Is it really exposing you to actually investigate those kinds of attacks? So I'd say it mostly depends on your ability to learn as much as you can and also practice and prove that you have this particular knowledge. Yeah. But generally from L1, you don't really want to spend so much time in L1 because the most exciting stuff happens in the other tiers. That's what I think.
Yeah, so to say what typically Doreen has just said, it just depends on how fast and ambitious and curious you are, so that you can learn, so that you can move to other tiers, because the exciting tiers are tier 2 where you handle incidents, and tier 3. And also you need to do a lot of research and reading a lot. You cannot skip that if you want to move forward. So yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, Zeddy.
Thank you, Joy and Doreen. From our discussion, I've understood that SIM to is a kind of network monitoring.
You have some background noise.
Okay, muted.
Okay.
Okay. I tend to understand that the SIM tool is a network monitoring tool, in that every traffic to the internal network must maybe be monitored or something by the SIM tool, or maybe the traffic must maybe go through the SIM tool. My question is, how do you integrate the SIM tool to your internal network, or how is it done? That integration. Thank you.
Integration generally varies depending on the tool you're using. But in general, there's just the process of onboarding the devices onto the tool and making sure that, for example, if you're onboarding end user devices, so depending on the environment, whether it's Windows or Linux or Mac, there are different procedures for onboarding each. If you're onboarding servers and or like access management systems, or you're onboarding biometrics, or you're onboarding firewalls. So it depends on the SIM tool that you're using, but there's just the generic, they have to be able to reach the end device and send back the metrics. And there are different metrics that are monitored, from uptime, from intrusion. So it's very dependent on the particular tool. But I can say, to get yourself understanding that procedure, it would be good if you use an open source tool and like set up your own lab where you have like maybe 2 simulated environments, and then having them connect back to the SIM that you're using, so that you can just interact with how that process looks like, how the alerts look like, and how the monitoring the different types of data that comes in, whether it's uptime, whether it's security, intrusion, and that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add, so for a simple lab setup, you can put Wazoo on your Linux-based system, and also you have Windows 7 or 10, and then you install a Wazoo agent, which will be the one to send the logs to the SIM. So that's a very simple and basic setup to introduce you to how a SIM works. So you can put it in your VM.
Yeah, and I think there's a Wazoo room in Don't Try Hack Me, so you can check that out also. But I'm sure it's part of the modules going forward, so you'll get to experience that. Janice?
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome,
Hi.
Zeddy. Hi.
I wanted to ask, so on this, you listed some of the skills that one should have to be an SOC analyst. Indeed, so it says here are a few of the skills to have as an SOC analyst, and it's a long list. I think as a beginner, I find that a bit overwhelming because it's really a lot of skills and it's different skills. So I just wanted to ask, like, do you guys have all of these skills, and like, how long did it take you guys if you do have all of these skills, like how long did it take you to learn all of these things, and like which certifications did you take, and like how much pressure did you have to go through, and rather how much sacrifice did you have to like reading over the weekends, stuff like that. Just want to an understanding of how you guys managed to get where you are, how long it took, the certifications you did, and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you for that question. So taking you back, I remember I grouped the skills according to the tiers. So let's say for SOC Analyst 1, I only mentioned you need to have 4 fundamental skills. 1, it was networking. You must know how networks work. Cisco Academy have an introduction to networks, which is a very good course, and it usually even has a lab for simulating actual routers and switches and teaching you about protocols. You can start there. The next was cybersecurity principles, which are very easy to learn. You don't really need to go in depth, and also playing with the tools. Sites like TryHackMe can introduce you to some of the tools, some of the principles, and also SOC operations. So all this is, you just start from there and then you build slowly and slowly and slowly. For example, let's say for SOC Analyst 3, I am not well versed with reverse engineering, but you can be well versed in penetration testing and vulnerability assessment. So it's just building one skill after the next, not all of them at the same. Okay, you can do some at the same time, but you can't know everything at the same time, all in depth. So it's one thing after the next, after the next. So you can start with networking, after networking, cybersecurity principles, and then you go to SOC operations, threat intelligence, and then the rest. So pole pole.
Okay, so roughly, like, how long has it taken you in the industry to get to where you are?
I think if you dedicate enough time, for me, I believe in a year it's possible for you to have like just the basics, and then the rest you can learn on the job, so to speak.
Okay, thanks. I thought it was more overwhelming than that. So the last question is like, is there necessary to take extra certifications, like when you're looking for a job, do they look for specific certifications, or as long as you have skills, that's enough?
I mean, definitely skills do matter, and certifications are just, like a stamp of approval on your skill. But what really matters is the skill, and if you can demonstrate what you have the skill. If you have the money, you can pay for a certification. If you don't, you can always use the free tools, and they give you like a certificate of completion to show that you've been putting in the work, because some certifications are really expensive. But I'd say, and also there are so many certifications in the industry, and it's really hard to know how to zero in on one. But for me, what's my guiding line is look on various sites. LinkedIn does a good job. Also, when you're part of these networks within cybersecurity, look at the jobs they're posting and the certifications they're looking for, and look at someone who has a job you want, and if you just look at their LinkedIn profile, look at what they've done, and I feel like it gives you a good range on what is your trajectory and what certification would you particularly need. But generally, the skill really matters, because at the end of the day, if you have the certification and you can't do the job, what's the point?
Yeah, that's very true. And I think the other thing I would add maybe is to take advantage of free certifications. Like, I know we keep telling you guys there's a free certification by ISC Squared, the Certified in Cybersecurity. It's a beginner certifications, but companies in Kenya that are doing cybersecurity, like Seriano, are actually pushing for employers to recognize the Certified in Cybersecurity as a relevant certification for a beginner role. So the guys in the market are already trying to push it for you. So you just need to put in the effort and just, yeah, do the certifications. Right. Henry Chalo.
Okay, my question is, you have talked about CM and maybe the other tools you use. My question would be, the false positives, I'm sure you're overwhelmed with these false positives. Are you guys involved in the fine tuning maybe of your rules and alerts? And what really guides you to zero into what you really need, bearing in mind that things really evolve so fast in cybersecurity. And the other thing is on endpoint security, on bring your own device. How do you ensure a protection or security towards data leak on BYOD? Yeah.
Let me start with the fine tuning. So fine tuning is usually done because when you get a SIM, it usually comes with its rules, but you as an analyst may want to check other indicators of compromise. So we usually fine tune it, and we usually fine tune it as we go. If we see this is not right, it's not bringing the correct result, you fine tune it again. So it's a continuous process. And for bring your own devices, there are usually policies in place there. System administrator has put in the AD, but if Doreen has input on the bring your own device.
Basically, you find some organizations discourage BYOD, but the ones that do allow it, basically, you can have like network access control. So you know this particular device is allowed to connect to our internal system. This one is not. So you have a lower level of access in terms of that. Or you can also have like an endpoint monitoring tool or an antivirus tool to monitor the device for any malware or any compromise. But usually I feel like network access control does a good job. Yeah, it's dependent on the organization also.
Did that answer your question, Henry?
Yes, thanks.
All right. Because of time, we'll only answer the 4 questions that are left, and then we can release all of us to get on with the evening. So next, Nteani Mulwa.
Hey guys, thank you for your time. I was recently reading a report concerning ChatGPT and cybersecurity, and the report was basically saying hackers are now ditching the more technical ways of gaining access and turning towards social engineering. So, considering you guys are SOC analysts, is that something you're seeing on the ground, or do you think it's too early to tell?
Yeah, social engineering is a problem. So with that, you just have to really do awareness and create awareness within the people you work with. Yeah, because it's possible for anyone to get phished. It just depends on how convincing it is. And Joy is usually our resident social engineering person, so I guess she can have input on that.
Yeah, so social engineering is on the rise, phishing attacks on the rise, especially BEC attacks. They're usually one of the top attacks affecting organizations. And apart from user training, like on the system administrator side, he can set email filters to usually check SPF or DKIM if they're set well. So even though humans are the weakest link and we need to train them on that, we can also put some measures, technical measures to help it. But that doesn't necessarily mean the email won't pass. So we usually try to train the users and not rely on the technology. Does that answer?
Yes.
All right. Next we have Anne Dejito.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Joy and Doreen, for such an informative presentation. My question is, since you're monitoring from so many domains, how does a day-to-day SOC report look like? Thank you.
On our day-to-day, we try to highlight the incidents that have happened, whether the credible ones that have happened. So basically, you just highlight, what went on during your shift, and yeah, so you just whatever would need. For example, if you're monitoring, if you saw anything suspicious, maybe like an intrusion was detected, or an infected file, or there's a botnet. So in your report, you would indicate this is what I see today. So you indicate like what type of attack it was, the timeline when it happened, from when to when, what device was it detected on, how did it, if it moved the network, how did it move from which device to which device, and then the outcome of that, whether you managed to stop the attack. Most of the time, systems are really good, especially the settings on the firewall. So they drop most things. But yeah, basically anything you saw that was of relevance during your entire shift is what you submit. And you also indicate what needs further analysis. Maybe if it's not in your tier, then you move it on to someone else. But yeah, it needs to be as detailed as possible so that whoever you're handing it to next has a starting point where they're going to begin the investigation, and they know what to monitor like over the next few hours or the next few days. I hope that answers.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll have Mordecai and then Edwin will be the last question. Mordecai, you can go.
Okay, yeah, now, once again, now my query is around something that I think Kip raised when it comes to tools, in terms of either pen testing, automated tools, or like tools that you're supposed to use like yourself. So there's usually I'd use the term stigma that especially when you're around experienced hackers, that you need to develop, like, let's say, your own tools, and specifically, let's say, like things like Python, because I've also been trying to develop my own tools and read some books on it. What's the relevance, especially like when it comes to the use of tools? As a SOC analyst, is developing your own tools a necessity, or can you bridge that gap by using the existing tools? Or do we have to have like a nexus in terms of a common in between in trying to balance the use of like your own custom tools that you can use and readily available open source, so paid for tools? And especially when you use your own tools, how do you go about the issue of standardization? Like, do you have to prove its effectiveness? Does someone have to approve it, like an official body, or can you just use it and show proof of concept and it'll just be okay? That's all.
So, most of the open source tools out there are good. We usually use open source tools you can find on Kali. For custom tools, the ones usually used for custom is, let's say when you're creating a payload to evade systems. But creating your own hacking tool, I currently have not dealt on that. Just creating your own payload. But mostly we use open source tools which you can find, and they do work. So, yeah.
Just to add, in as much as also you're using all these tools, it does help to have knowledge on, how exactly the tools work. So also you need a lot of like background knowledge in terms of like what protocols do these tools run on, what what language are they built on, so that you can know exactly when you're running a particular tool, if you know exactly, for example, how a particular network works, then you will know this tool cannot help me here, this cannot help me here. And it's very rare, but if you are able to actually build your tool or write a script that can do something faster and the exact way you want it, it's definitely not frowned upon. You do need to run it by someone, maybe your lead or like a more experienced analyst, but it definitely does help to know if you can write your own scripts. It's a good addition to have. But even if you're using tools, you need to know how exactly they work. Otherwise, they won't be of much help to you in the specific way you want to use them.
Okay, thank you. And just finally, like, is it something that your employer might require, or as long as you can effectively move around in the field itself?
It may not be a requirement per se. It can be something, it's a nice skill to have, so to speak, but no one will require you to build any tool, because some of the tools that are even already built, whether open source or proprietary, they've been years in the making. Like, it's taken the companies years to make them. So no one will expect you to be able to write your own tool. To use them, yes. To create one, not really.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Edwin?
My last question, mine is just a quick one. So have you guys had an experience, a real world experience where either your employer or I'm guessing not your employer, but maybe one of your clients, where someone has been like fully compromised to the point that maybe there's a loss, there's some kind of loss, either data, information, or even money? And if yes, how was it like? How was that experience like? That's my question.
We cannot really go into the particulars of the risks we've found and the impact it's had on the organization. Yes, we can't really go into that.
Okay.
But you can read about the ones that have been published. Case in point, SolarWinds.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay. Mohammed, Musitsu, you can go next.
Hi.
Hi.
I think
welcome back.
Thank you. I think we can help Edwin maybe by trying to help him understand and maybe go through that, assuming that has happened. Not that we want you to share what you've actually happened on the real life situation. Assuming you have a compromised staff, what are you going to do as a SOC analyst? Maybe in that perspective or point of view, we can help Edwin. Thank you.
Okay, I see. I guess hypothetically speaking, you would go through the the incident response life cycle. So the first thing you always do is containment, like stop it from spreading and from causing as much damage as it can. So that is where you always begin. Once you can contain it, then you can begin to investigate and restore the systems that are there. So it's basically just going through the incident response life cycle. Depending on the kind of threat that you have, the containment measures differ. Be it maybe if there's a server and you know the server has been compromised and there's a likelihood of it spreading to other servers, you can decide to contain it, whether cut it off from the rest of the network, but still keep it on because again, you don't want to lose evidence, so to speak. So yeah, contain it, and then usually organizations normally have backup systems. So you try as much to not let it affect the daily running. So if you have backups, now you bring back your backups and then so contain and then restore, and then now you can go investigating and find out how far is it, how bad is it. But yeah, basically try as much to keep business going and to contain the attack. That is what you typically do. Maybe Joy can add. Is there anything to add?
No, it's well said.
Okay, you have to go really quickly so that we can respect our guest time. We've already gone 16 minutes past the allotted time.
Okay.
And yeah.
A quick question. What can you tell us about honeypots?
There are good deterrents because you can make the intruder think that they're within your systems, but then you can be able to detect them before they actually get to your system. So I guess it's good to have, to speak. Yeah.
So I was hoping if someone has experience on the same, maybe Jennifer, I don't know, can we share contact with your guest later after the class? Then we can have a session or one about the same on the.
Yeah, I think we can talk to Joy and Doreen and see if they can come back. I see you guys really enjoyed the session. We don't want it to end, so we can request them to come back again so that we can have a deeper conversation if they're open to it. Joy, Doreen, would you be open to coming back and talking to us again?
Yes, we would.
All right. Okay.
One more. I guess you can take that last one.
Okay, Maurice, you can go. Maurice?
Hello. Oh, hi.
Hi.
A bit of a late entry, but I just wanted to speak or maybe ask a question on what you are discussing in terms of incidences in the workplace. And I don't know, I've experienced these at a time when I was as an intern, and I might have or might not have been able to follow the right processes in incident reporting. For example, how soon do you act on the process after you've reported it? Would you like wait for authorization from your direct manager, or do you follow the company policies, like the processes, like, or do you take initiative on your own? what will you recommend?
You follow your company's incident handling process. I believe part of incident handling is you need to prepare for it. So I'm sure there's documentation for a proper procedure for if this happens, this is what you're supposed to do, so that you can follow it when the actual incident happens. And you also follow the escalation matrix if there's any. Doreen, can you add to that?
Yeah, so basically, within a SOC, there is an escalation matrix and also like an incident response guide that tells you in the example of maybe this and this happens, this is who to call next, this is who to get in touch with, because you can't go rogue and do it by yourself. You always need to have people responsible, need to be aware of what's happening, and then now you follow the procedure that's laid down. And if you find maybe how you responded to a particular incident, the procedures that were written down were not sufficient enough, then that calls for a review. So that now moving on next, you express that this didn't work previously, therefore I think we need to do this and this. But it definitely always stick to what the organization says about how to respond. It also limits liability on your end.
Okay, understood. I was asking that in relation to such positions like entry-level positions. Like at that time, I was an intern, so I might not have gotten all the policies, and I maybe found some things. You are being proactive and all that, trying to be proactive, but you take some missteps and maybe take a few shortcuts with the end goal of also helping the company, but you end up being victimized due to your taking things into your own hands, because you consider maybe the policies are a bit slow, even after you've escalated. They take time to react. So yeah, that was maybe a scenario. I just wanted to get your point of view as professionals.
I guess moving forward, it would be prudent for you to address the concerns that you have with maybe your supervisor or whoever is next in line. And maybe if you find that also, for example, other analysts share the same concern, address the concern, because sometimes if you just go do it by yourself, you might end up causing a lot more harm than good. So I'd always address the concerns that you have and the shortcomings and have them addressed, like, this is a problem. Yeah.
All right. Thank you everyone for your questions. And thank you so much, Doreen and Joy. That was a very insightful session. I'm sure there's some people with more questions, and we can address that in the next when we have you the next time. But thank you so much. It was a well thought out presentation. It covered a lot of what our students have been thinking about, because I know a lot of them want to get into SOC operations. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure to be able to share our knowledge and also to, get questions that can also help us, improve what we need to learn, what you're also curious about. We'd be happy to join you again if you need us.
All right. Would you mind sharing your maybe LinkedIn or Twitter accounts, so that if someone would like to reach out to you outside of such a session, how would they reach you?
So my LinkedIn is just Doreen Ochung. If you go read the FOSEC blogs, my Twitter is in the articles I've written. So yeah,
Okay.
if you DM me on LinkedIn or Twitter, I can answer your questions.
You can also find me, Joy Mwaniki, on LinkedIn.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. We have gone way past our usual time, but thank you for being patient and staying to the end. With that, I'll end the session and have a good night.